is from the truth itself to that constellation of elements which, while making the truth, remain in the background, tacitly and unthinkingly accepted. This, for example, is the sense in which Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, in the famous lectures on parousia given at the University of Berkeley in 1983, speaks precisely of problematization of truth. Once it's no longer recognized as a value in itself, truth imposes itself as a problematic field. And this in a way implies the renunciation of truth, but on the contrary, it promotes the passage from the assumption of truth as an absolute value to the experience of truth. I quote from Michel Foucault lectures. My intention was not to deal with the problem of truth, but with the problem of truth-teller, or truth-telling as an activity. By this I mean that, for me, it was not a question of analyzing the internal or the external criteria that would enable the Greek and Romans or anyone else to recognize whether a statement or proposition is true or not. An issue for me was rather the attempt to consider truth-telling as a specific activity or as a role. And I would say that the problematization of truth, which characterized both the end of pre-Socratic philosophy and the beginning of the kind of philosophy which is still ours today, the problematization of truth has two sides, two major aspects. On one side, it's concerned with ensuring that the process of reasoning is correct in determining whether a statement is true, and the other side is concerned with the question, what is the importance for the individual and for society of telling the truth, of knowing the truth, of having people who tell the truth, as well as knowing how to recognize them. With the side which is concerned with determining how to ensure that a statement is true, we have the roots of the great tradition in Western philosophy. And on the other side, concerned with the question of the importance of telling the truth, knowing who's able to tell the truth, and knowing why we should tell the truth. We have the roots of what we could call the critical tradition in the West. For Foucault, therefore, working on truth as a problem means grasping the critical significance of the Western philosophical tradition, or we could say of the philosophical tradition as well, and consequently the fundamental ethical, political coloring of the practice of truth. Indeed, truth holds from time to time both the construction of oneself and one's testimony in front of the others in public space. The way of saying the truth thus conditions one's being in the world and one's relationship with others. Acting in the name of the truth that one is and of the truth that one is and that one has means giving dignity and a coherent form to one's experience of life, giving meaning to one's being in the world. Now, it is precisely the phenomenon of the post-truth that paradoxically can reactivate this critical dimension of philosophy in our day. If in the world of post-truth it no longer makes sense to seek the answer to the question what is truth or what is the truth, or to certify the truth status of individual affirmation by logical, gnoseological criteria, all that remains to be done is to bring to the surface the sphere and the context in which something like truth is effectively given and constituted, and with this is given and constituted a subject. Precisely in this sense, then, the phenomenon of post-truth can become an important opportunity for philosophy today, because it would allow it to return to playing a fundamental role in society. the role of a knowledge and practice with a highly critical scope. As Lee McIntyre suggests, in the post-truth area, it's not so much a matter of adapting to a world where facts don't matter anymore, I quote, but instead to stand up for the notion of truth and learn how to fight back, unquote. To fight for the truth, it's to problematize the truth. And to problematize means to recover the critical attitude of philosophy. The critical attitude of philosophy is not just a questioning of the real form of a logical point of view, but questioning that pushes us to look inside the folds of the real for those forces and those elements that constitute the real itself. Philosophy, in this sense, places itself along the edge of a thought which, by contrast to the classical dichotomy between thought and reality, truth and history, immerses itself in the physical web of life itself, which is always in flux. Critical thinking does not involve the indiscrimination of our own freedom and subjective. The latter are not released from the historical constellation in which they exist and in which they have to put themselves to the test each time. Something like freedom and subjectivity are only possible if they are able to face the test of reality. If they are able, in other words, to verify their own truth in the real, to subject it to the test of verification of the real. Because truth in the post-truth age, as we have seen, is no longer self-evident and therefore requires a personal commitment and sometimes even a good dose of courage. To fight for the notion of truth means to say it, to enunciate it, to bear witness to it, to give it expression, to make it, in a word, public. I have time. And as an Italian philosopher recalls Maurizio Ferraris in his essay Post-Truth and Other Enigmas, while there can indeed be reality without truth, it's not possible to have truth without reality, not in the sense of the classical idea of truth as correspondence conformity, but in the sense of a positive theory of verification. Verification and confirmation, taken therefore as practice, which makes something true, which are able to correspond to the harshness of reality, fighting not for a cancellation of the world in favor of one's own interpretation of the world, and not even for blind adherence to the world. The critical ethos of philosophy, assuming truth as a problem, opens itself up to the sense of truth as an event. Indeed, truth is nothing more than the event of the encounter between the subject and the world. It's not apart from our being in the world, from our speaking to others, from our expressing ourselves publicly. Truth, therefore, coincides with its own expression, and not with inert mental evidence. Truth is essentially a discursive experience, put into public form, and therefore an existential experience that implies participation in political life, and the conscious and the fully autonomous exercise of citizenship. Exercise and practice whose value is not timeless and eternal, but linked always to the here and now, to the contingency, to the present lifetime. The work of philosophy as a practice of truth in the post-truth area would thus go in the direction outlined by Merleau-Ponty. He speaks of the philosopher as the one who thinks the truth in the event, not like the know-it-all who thinks according to to abstract principle and criteria, nor like the smart who claims to live without truth. For Merleau-Ponty, truth is what binds man to the world and binds him indissolubly to others, to life and to history. To do and say the truth means to reckon with reality each time and to offer one's testimony to others. Nothing is taken for granted in this scenario. The philosopher is the one who questions the already given, the already constituted, not in order to give up, but better to grasp it in all its complexity. The philosopher is the one who seeks to distance himself from things, to grasp the coming to expression of things themselves, to grasp things in their nascent state. Because it is not in the fullness of things in itself that truth is given. One does not give an absolute of truth. Instead, it is in the gaps, I quote, that we are open to the truth, unquote. It is not therefore a question of diversing the truth, but of being aware that there is no absolute truth, no absolute knowledge, and it is only because of this lack that one can open oneself up to truth. Something like truth it is given in the emptiness of truth itself, in the contingent and historical bringing of the being of things to expression. Truth, therefore, is drawn upon in detachment and in continuous gap from oneself. For this reason, we can recognize with Merleau-Ponty that to philosophize is to seek, and this is to imply that there are things to see and to say. In other words, philosophy does not consist in the mere certification of simple attestation of what is already given, which imposes itself on us in its solid fullness. To the habit of choosing a position of retreat and withdrawal from the real, the critical attitude of philosophy prefers the positioning in the place and in the moment, in which something is given to see and comes to expression. Philosophical practice does not take place in a safe and unhindered environment of contemplation or reflection. Rather, it consists in the acquisition of a more acute gaze capable of breaking through the obtuse and saturated order of reality that surrounds us, and that, in opening itself up to the abyss, sees an infinite and rich reserve of possibilities. Looking at the abyss over which one is suspended leads to action, to producing new meaning, to giving new expression and depth to the real and its possible infinites. The one who practices philosophy is therefore an individual who assumes an uncomfortable position, since he does not adapt to the spatial and temporal coordinates of the world in which he lives. The philosopher is in fact someone who tends to step aside from the frontality of things, someone who becomes a stranger in his own land, a strange case of an absent presence. I'm going to the conclusion. On the basis of this consideration, it is possible to grasp the sense of that apparently incongruous connection that I have so far tried to see between post-truth and the critical practice of philosophy. Because the gesture inaugurated by post-truth, a gesture of displacement and distance from and of truth, concords with the critical attitude of philosophy, which is such as to shift attention away from a theory oriented to the questioning of the what, to a genealogy that instead investigates the origin and change of that what. Moreover, it does not question an impersonal, neutral and static who, but the questioner himself, capable with his act of opening the horizon up to ways of thinking otherwise. The critical posture of philosophy within the experience of post-truth, therefore, does not aim to identify increasingly incorrect and formal condition of knowledge, but to discover a new way of being in the world, of practicing the world. The scenario opened by post-truth is not one in which there is no trace left of truth, but one in which we can finally take charge of truth in all complexity and in all its articulation. The prefix post thus seen places us at the limits of truth, on the threshold between its complete denial and its complete exhaustion. And on this threshold, philosophy must find its own. If truth is exposed to the double destiny of absence or sublimation, this means that truth is not given once and for all. That truth is the result of historical process and contingent choices. The truth is a constellation within which the same subject questioning the same truth orbits. The truth, in other words, lies in the space in which its own destiny is made. Only a philosophy capable of taking up the challenge post-knowledge and society but post-truth can return to play its authentic role as a critical threshold in the space of knowledge and in the public space of city, of society. Thank you.
Many thanks, Yusi, such inspiring speech pertaining to the genealogy of post-truth, and it links to the notion of to philosophy. And I would like to summarize and really deepen in the discussion session. She has discussed about the meaning of the practical pause in the post-truth, yeah, and then also the problematization of truth, and also goes to explain the importance of telling the truth. It is especially within the tradition of Foucault, the parasia, that is not important what is the truth, but rather who say the truth, does the truth, and so truth is as critical tradition. And her job is actually rethinking the role of philosophy as a practice of truth. And she also discussed about what is the relationship between truth and reality, and she mentioned that truth is conceived as discursive experience, and what is actually the philosopher may play in the context of post-truth. It is a challenge for a philosopher, but it is also an opportunity for a philosopher to discover new ways of interpreting the world, of perceiving the world. As there are many alternatives, I think this is such huge discussion pertaining post-truth, and she is an expert of philosophy, theoretical philosophy, especially the tradition of existentialism and also postmodernism. Foucault is postmodernism. One may also ask, for example, Professor Juicy, is actually the post-truth an application of postmodernism? Maybe that after the session, after the presentation of all audience, of all presenters. And I would like to introduce our second speaker. He is Professor Hans Günther. He is also a distinguished scholar in Germany. He is professor of classical philology and especially philosophy. And he wrote many work in German and English. For example, tuition and politics, between poetry and politics, and the other one is about the consideration of religion, ethic, and politics, and also ethnic and religious cohabitation in and conflict. Yeah. So although his main interest in classical philosophy, also medieval philosophy, but his curiosity draws also his attention to the problem of religion, interfaith dialogue, and also today he will discuss about non-metaphysical approach towards God. Of course, metaphysics in this sense is understood in Western tradition, not metaphysics in, for example, Iranian philosophy. And yeah, and I think it also has a relation for Postel, especially he also will mention in the presentation pertaining what is religious truth. It is universal truth or no? It is also part of his presentation. Without further ado, I would like to give the time to Professor Hans Gunther. Gunther is his family name, but it's difficult to pronounce. It is better to say Hans, yeah, Professor Hans, more familiar. Yeah, Hans. Time is yours, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm very grateful to Professor Asfa and to the organizers to be in your wonderful country again and also to participate in this great conference for the second time. I hope you give me a few minutes more because I must stand up to the demand of Professor Jarrett to make an extremely difficult topic at least a little bit simple. So, religion is a very problematic term. We use it for phenomena somehow taking an analogous place in various cultures, but which at the same time differ widely in the approach of the worshipper and equally in their very content. This is due precisely because the Latin, and that is a European word, religion, was transferred from the pagan ancient religion to the completely different Christian religiosity, and at the same time Jewish and Christian religiosity began to be transformed by imposing upon them the metaphysical religion of Greek philosophy. Metaphysics is a system of thought created by a very specific approach to thought, which rests on a completely arbitrary basic assumption, Greek philosophy. This system of thought shapes until today much of Western thinking. However, today it's crystal clear that various cultures have different ways of thought. Metaphysics is irrelevant for most of the cultures of the world. God, however, in particular the God of the Abrahamic tradition, is a universal truth for all mankind. Today it must be clear that as such he cannot be the God of a particular way of thought. Moreover, metaphysics is obsolete today, even in the Western world. Natural science is the only legitimate heir of Greek metaphysics. In natural science, metaphysics is substantially transformed. Natural science is not any longer a truth of a particular culture, indeed. It is universal. A cell phone will crash if you throw it from the 38th floor in London, Antananarivo, or Jakarta. However, scientific truth, in contrast to what metaphysics pretended, is a very particular truth in its very conception. I would call it, first of all, factual. But not only that, A historical event is factual truth too. Scientific truth is indeed, if applied to its very specific area of validity, universal. It is universal in its very particularity precisely because its ultimate yardstick is universal functionality. This functionality is underpinned by a system of reasoning. However, this system of reasoning is not dogmatic, but hypothetical. It cannot be but hypothetical because reason is not the yardstick of this truth. Reason is only a means applied to it. Thus, the reasoning of sciences must be flexible so as to be adapted to the ever new requirements of functionality. Factual truth, whether scientific or historical, can never be normative. Thus, rational thought can never answer the questions relating to the sense, the direction of our lives. The only relevant role of Western reason today is nothing but to be a tool of science. If the factual truth of science is a universal one, this is precisely so because our life in a very important sector is based upon it. Thus, it cannot be ignored. Every intellectually honest approach to the world and our life cannot be in contrast with it. However, this factual truth must be taken for what it is and must be consoled with another, more fundamental and comprehensive truth. The truth about the essence and direction of our existence as a whole. Before I offer some reflections on this, let me, however, stress one point first. If the word God is a cipher for our longing for an answer to the ultimate quest of the human heart, for making sense of man's place in the world, God cannot but be an experience of the human heart. Heart not in the sentimental sense, but in the sense of that what transcends even the combination of all human faculties, man's heart as that what makes man a whole. God is lost to those who reduce man to a rational being. The God of philosophers is a poorly reduced God. God is there for all human beings. Everyone can be close to God. The child, the analphabet, the mentally handicapped. God eliminates all differences between human beings. He is the same for all. The same for all in their being different. And precisely that is what makes him, being present in this world and in our lives, as the one who is always close to every one of us, by being unlike every one of us, and by being far exalted beyond this world of ours. God is the one who is inside and outside of this world at the very same time. The experience of God is not an experience of the intellect. The intellect, however, is a human faculty too. We cannot but reason about our lives. Thus, we cannot but reason about God. But this need to employ this limited faculty of ours to Him is a sign of our imperfection. we cannot but fail to experience God truly in any intellectual effort. We can only experience Him in our failure to grasp His essence intellectually. So let me now come to my initial question. After what I've said, a non-metaphysical approach to God is one that does not try to approach God as a factual truth. Also not as something in a world parallel to the factual world. Factuality is one way to experience the world and our lives. God is another way. Perhaps we can provisorially call factual experience an external experience. God an inner experience. Thus, the first element of what I call a non-metaphysical approach to God is describing Him in the terms of an inner experience. We may experience a flower which meets our gaze on our way as an object we pluck and later put in a vase or present it to a beloved person. We may experience the help of a stranger as something useful to find our way to the railway station. We experience all these things externally as we experience a fridge as something which cools a drink we pull out eventually. However, we may also experience a flower as something which gives us joy, the help of a stranger who has no reason to help us. In fact, already the smile we may occasionally see on the face of a pretty girl, a girl we don't know and will never see again, as a joy. A joy which is given to us without any reason. And is not that the essential mark of all our inner experiences? Experiences like that of beauty, joy, but even more so, desperation, pain, that there's no reason for them. There's ultimately no answer to the question, why? Why should a girl smile upon us? Why does a flower give us joy? Why do we experience love? Is it not the lack of any reason for all this what really gives us satisfaction? Do we not want to be loved just for that what we are? And what reason would there be for anyone to love us just for what we are? What reason do we have to love anyone just for what he is? What reason do we have to feel happy to see a flower? Is it not the essence of all these moments in which we feel joy or love? Joy or love pure and simple. That in these moments we just are who we are and let things be what they are without any purpose, any why. And do we not experience the lack of any why even more in suffering and pain? If we suffer from an illness, we can try to find the external reason by using science. In many cases, we shall find the virus or something else which is responsible, and as far as the actual state of functionality in the area of medicine permits it, we may even find a cure. This example shows how great the advantages of natural science are to human life. However, it shows at the same time their limits. The knowledge of science, and thus its functionality, cannot but be imperfect. It will never be able to take away human suffering completely, not even in the area of suffering where it can be applied today with great effect. Suffering is an integral and inevitable part of human life. Suffering finds its apex in human mortality. We cannot avoid the suffering we feel in losing by death a beloved person. We cannot avoid our own mortality with its suffering. Neither the suffering the act of dying will inflict upon most of us, nor the suffering in looking ahead to our own death. Whether this suffering is just the fear of the pain normally involved in dying, or it may be the fear just of non-existing any longer, or maybe existing in another state, which we feel that we cannot be sure it will be a happy one. We can, to some degree, answer the question of the external reason for suffering, sometimes even take it away. We can overlook the suffering of others. We can overcome our own suffering for others. In the same way as we can just overlook a flower or a pleasant smile. We can't, however, overlook our very own pain. In the moment pain strikes us, we don't only ask what is the external cause. As soon as we have no immediate external way out of our suffering, this suffering inevitably makes us ask, why must I suffer? Why does this external reason for suffering befall me? And there's never any answer we can give ourselves to this question. Because suffering is by definition that which we reject, that which we conceive as that what should not be there. Thus, paradoxically, we feel in suffering in the most acute manner the healing presence of the whole we all long for. We cannot but feel it precisely as that what should be there but is missing. We feel it in its absence. Thus, there is at least one aspect of our lives where we cannot escape the experience of God. God as the power we long for, whether we know it or not, the power which makes our lives whole, in the sense of unimpaired and in tune with the whole in which we experience ourselves to be contained. We make this experience precisely there where our lives are exposed to harm, and the ultimate harm they can be exposed to is death. But precisely death, the fact that we are mortal, we are not infinite, makes us wholes. Our wholeness as individuals is precisely our ultimate imperfection in face of the universal whole. Thus, precisely our being exposed to suffering, our mortality, our imperfection, makes us individual wholes. And this experience of wholeness in imperfection gives us inevitably also the experience of wholeness as redemption, as that which our imperfect wholeness is pointed to. Suffering and mortality make us experience God in His absence, or rather, more precisely, they make us feel God being present in His absence. In suffering and death, we experience immediately the mystery of God's being as being completely different from being in this world. He is different from anything in such a radical way that He is not simply not like or analogous to anything else, but He is so different that the difference of being different or identical is not valid any longer. And this paradox of God's very essence we experience directly in God being present precisely by being absent. Still, how we experience the presence of God is and cannot be but different for any one of us, because being different among ourselves is our way of being. We cannot but experience God inexplicitly. However, we may also turn our attention to this wirelessness of love, beauty and joy and experience God explicitly. In suffering, we cannot but ask why, and we receive no answer. We can be left answerless, but we can also take back our question and simply accept the lack of any reason as both a sign of our imperfection and our need for redemption in God. And this is the ultimate test for human beings in their relationship with God, where they can take themselves back to that degree so as to extinguish their eye and dwell in the silence that surrounds the man who has given up to ask why, in the face of everything that meets his experience. The silence we experience when we put our own voice to rest. The voice which is questioning prevents us from hearing in the silence of every human voice another voice, the voice of God. There's not one way only to make this ultimate experience, but surely it's more than hard to make this experience simply by man's effort alone. Buddhism, for example, is a religion with no personal God. There's only a model of the perfect life in the person of Buddha. Religions with an eminently personal God are the Abrahamic religions. Their God is a God who addresses man directly by revealing himself to him in human speech. The experience of God as a person is a privileged experience of God. The experience of a personal God gives us the possibility of a particularly intimate dialogue with God. The experience of a personal God gives us the possibility, God speaks to us in everything we experience, and by being attentive we can hear him speak to us in every event of our life. However, with a God we experience as a person, we can speak as we speak with another human being. It will happen often to us that for one reason or the other we have no human vis-a-vis we can speak to. If we can speak to God, we are never alone with any event that may befall us. We often do not know what to say, even if we have a partner to talk to. The God of revelation has given us in his revelation formulas of prayer in which we can and should address him. Thus he wants us to get acquainted to speaking to him, telling him what is in our hearts, although he knows it anyhow. He wants it because only in being acquainted to speak to him, we open ourselves to hearing his word in the silence that surrounds us when our voice ceases to speak. What makes us exposed to and capable of suffering is our mortality, that which makes us a whole in imperfection, longing for wholeness and redemption. that what contains our individual existence is death. As individuals in this sense, we live as beings pointed towards their death. Death appears to be the end of this life. However, it appears so because we cannot but see death from the perspective of life. Precisely that are the ultimate limits of our perception. Death, in this sense, is the end of life. This poses the question what the end of life is, and answers to these questions are always put in the form, what comes after death? Nothing, a new kind of life, and if so, what kind of life? However, the question of an after is a question put from the perspective of life. In this question, death remains a part of life. However, in its true sense, death is not a part of life. With death in the full sense, it is the end of the dichotomy of life versus death. Life versus death, which is seen as the end of this life. But when we exit our lives and enter death, we exit our existence in time. Outside time, there is no after. In death, we are outside life and outside time. In the moment of our death, we don't enter a somehow analogous world, nor do we enter nothingness. In death, we are redeemed into the whole that both transcends us and gives us our individual wholeness. We enter it as individuals, with body and souls, as the ones we are in the full sense of the word, the ones we are at the end of time, the end of our time. In this moment, not only time, but every dichotomy, body, soul, I, non-I, ceases to exist. We enter this moment as entire beings, with our bodies, with our souls. In this moment we enter eternity. Eternity not as the opposition to time, but the end of the opposition of time and timelessness. In the moment of death we meet the whole. And if we are graced with a personal experience of God, we meet God face to face. We meet Him as we are, in our flesh. And in death we are transformed, resurrected in our flesh into something new, something eternal, which is contained in God and is close to God in another way than we are in our lives. These are my few humble reflections of how we can, not must, conceive God in our lives today. Yet, let me sum up my speech in this remark. Our attempt to grasp God with our intellect can only help us on our way towards God if we realize the failure of this intellect to make the experience of God. Our desire to ask why is a cage in which we are stuck. Our intellect builds a wall around us which prevents us from seeing that God is everywhere in our everyday life. The aim of our intellectual efforts as applied to God can only be to break down the wall our intellect has built around us, so that we can break free and open up to the experience of God as the force that accompanies and guides our everyday lives in every of its little details, whether we realize it or not. Thank you.
Many thanks, Hans. Such highly philosophical discussion of God, yeah, actually. This is actually his reflection, philosophical reflection pertaining to two things actually, God and eschatology. Eschatology. So I believe that life after death, yeah, akhirat, and but although it is some notion, some conception are quite familiar for me, for us, yeah, especially when we read Islamic philosophy or Islamic eschatology, but it is quite new when we see this background in Western philosophy, and uh, for Hans, God is for all human beings, so it cannot be approached by intellect alone. It should be by inner experience, and this is what we call in Islamic tradition, for example, Mukasafa, Theophany, Tajar, and others. Not as factual truth. God is not approached as factual truth, and this inner experience is private, personal, and direct us to intimate dialogue with God. And such experience is hardly to be described. In mystical tradition, we know that man lam yaduk lam ya'rif. Those do not experience something cannot know something. God know that the essence of the thing. Yeah. Man lam yaduk lam ya'rif. This is maybe this broad philosophical discussion, but maybe in the discussion we could tell further or investigate further, especially in comparison with Islamic philosophy. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Professor Ruslan, Muhammad Ruslan bin Muhammad Nur. Yeah. He is young professor from University of Malaya, and in the Department of Islamic History and Civilization, so he's a historian and also philosopher actually, and he has written some work on, for example, fatwa, Muslim minorities, Muslim women, and Islam as religion of tolerance and dialogue. He is especially in the specialist of Islamic Jerusalem, Masjid Al-Aqsa and others. And he would like to draw our attention to Masjid Al-Aqsa, the philosophical discussion pertaining Masjid Al-Aqsa, and at the first part of his presentation, and the second part is Malaysia reaction to Donald Trump statement pertaining or decision pertaining to Masjid Al-Aqsa. Without further ado, I would like to give the time to Professor Ruslan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Pertamanya terima kasih. Thank you so much to the chairperson, Professor Asfa Widianto, and also the organizing committee who gave us the opportunity to be with all of you today. I have the PowerPoint presentation. Poinnya ada, power belum tentu, Pak. Jadi saya ni rasa gemetar sebenarnya datang ke Indonesia kali ini. Rasa takut dan bimbang juga. Bukan kerana asap ya, bukan kerana haze, bukan kerana jeroboh. Tapi gara-gara kemarin bulan lepas di Gelora Bung Karno. Malaysia nampaknya masih dapat menewaskan Indonesia 3-2. Jadi saya bimbang nak datang ke sini, takut orang tahu saya orang Malaysia. Tapi kerana kemarin Pak Kuswana dari UIN Syariatullah datang ke Malaysia, dia kata jangan bimbang, Malaysia dengan Indonesia ini kita saudara. Kita sama-sama Upin dan Ipin katanya. Kita Upin dan Ipin. Baik, saya pun rasa presentation saya ini sekejap saja. Karena saya dah lama di Indonesia dari hari Khamis yang lepas. Hari ini hari Khamis, sudah 8 hari. Terus teringat kepada isteri. Apalagi hari ini tadi pagi buka WA, ada orang hantar kepada saya, dia tanya, karikatur dia tanya, malam ini malam apa Pak? Aduh, bikin pusing saya. Baik ya. InsyaAllah tajuk saya ini berkaitan dengan ada sedikit beda. I will present a little bit different what our two respected presenters have shared with us. This is with regard to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. I start with the normal Quranic verse. When we talk about Al-Aqsa Mosque, we will refer to Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 1. I do not know why it's not coming up to the the slides. The verse mentioned in the Quran, Subhanallazi asra bi'abdihi laylan minal masjidil haram ila al-masjidil aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu was-sami'ul basir. Glory to God who has taken His servant, which is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Masjid al-Haram in Mecca to al-Masjid al-Aqsa during the night, to show him the ayah, the signs of the glory of the God, and His the most innahu was-sami'ul basir. Yeah. There is some technical issues that probably, if we look at this verse, yeah, the issue is where to locate the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Where to locate the Masjid Al-Aqsa. That's the problem. In the history, we know that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was not being built during the night of Al-Isra and Mi'raj. The Masjid Al-Aqsa as the building is not it's not exist. It's not exist as the building in the place in that place. So the problem is how we would like to understand the word Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. That's why I come in with the epistemological problem and discussion on the issue of or the meaning of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa itself. Why is it not been built during that time? We know from the historical works, the first building ever been built in that particular area, it is called the Dome of the Rock, which has been built during the time of Marwan bin Abdul Malik. So now it comes to where we want to examine this verse. We have a few scholars who talk about the Jerusalem is not important to Islam. They say because Jerusalem has not been mentioned even once in the Quran. If you compare to the other texts, the Bible and things like that, the word Jerusalem has been mentioned more than 700 times. More than 700 times. Compared to the Quran, there is no such word of Jerusalem in the Quran. So how come this Jerusalem become important to Muslims? As they go into Rabba, when they discuss about the term of Al-Quds, they mention about this matter, and as the historians or as the researcher, we would like to know whether it is true or not that there is no such things which has been mentioned in the Quran. When we compare, when we do the study in the Quran, we found out that even though the Quran has not used the word Jerusalem, but there are other terms actually which has been used in the Quran, and one of those terms is Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. So when in the Quran it says that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, the problem for us is to locate where is the Masjid Al-Aqsa. One of the scholars says that if we look into the understanding of Al-Aqsa, they say that this is the furthest mosque. The furthest mosque. If we look into the translation of the Quran from Yusuf Ali, for instance, in English, Yusuf Ali says that the meaning of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa is the furthest mosque, masjid yang paling jauh. And then from the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people ask, where is the furthest mosque during the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Di manakah masjid yang paling jauh pada zaman Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Di mana masjid yang paling jauh? Ibu-ibu dan bapa-bapa bisa bagi pandangan kepada saya. Apa masjid yang paling jauh pada zaman Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Masjid yang paling jauh. This is the problem when we use the term, or when we translate the terminology that has been used in the Quran as Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. If we translate it to the furthest mosque, then people will ask, where is the furthest mosque? Sebab tu kalau dalam kajian saya lebih suka untuk menggunakan Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa tu as the term itself. Masjid Al-Aqsa adalah Masjid Al-Aqsa. We do not want to translate Masjid Al-Aqsa as the furthest mosque, because when we translate it to the furthest mosque, people will ask, where is the furthest mosque during the time of Prophet Muhammad SAW? Whether the Prophet really came to Masjid Al-Aqsa during the night or not. Those who try to deny it because they said that the masjid or the mosque has not been built, and then the first building was ever built on that area is the Dome of the Rock. So dekat mana kita nak mencari hujahan yang mengatakan bahawa masjid itu sebenarnya wujud pada malam Isra' dan Mi'raj itu? Itu yang menjadi sedikit orang kata cabaran kepada kita untuk melihat perkara itu. Tapi sebenarnya benda itu memang ada, memang wujud pada malam Lailatul Isra' dan Mi'raj. When we look into several of the hadith that mention when Prophet Muhammad SAW came back from the night journey and ascension, when he stood in the near to the Kaabah, the Sahaba asked him, where did you go last night? And then Prophet Muhammad start mentioning about his journey and things like that. And then the Sahaba asked, if it is true that you have visited Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, then tell us how many pillars of that mosque is. Yeah? Then the Prophet Muhammad SAW start telling the Sahaba about the gambaran masjid itu, and then how Prophet Muhammad SAW mention or describe about the mosque. This is what he says, that when I stood by between the Hijr Ismail and the Kaabah, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala give the idea, bayangan berkaitan dengan masjid itu. Fajallallahu li Baitul Maqdis wa ana anzuru ilaihi. Dan Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mendatangkan gambar Masjid Al-Aqsa di depan Nabi Muhammad SAW, and then the Prophet Muhammad SAW start describing the mosque to the Sahaba. So the other question come, if there is no building in di dalam kawasan Masjid Al-Aqsa itu, so which mosque that the Prophet Muhammad SAW actually explain to the Sahaba? Itu ya. Ini dalam kertas yang saya hantar ke sini. Saya tulis berkaitan dengan epistemological problem surrounding Al-Aqsa Mosque. In the Quran, the word Al-Aqsa has only been mentioned once in the Quran. So we have to look into what actually the real meaning of it. I come to the question, jika benar tidak ada masjid di Baitul Maqdis, di manakah Nabi Muhammad SAW pergi? Benarkah tidak ada masjid di Baitul Maqdis? So the second question is that true there is no mosque in Baitul Maqdis? Itu yang saya membawakan di sini. Ya, kalau saya nak ringkaskan saja, kalau dalam kajian saya kita dapati bahawa the whole area is what we call it Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Al-Aqsa Mosque does not need to be a proper mosque like what come to our mind nowadays. Kalau dalam zaman sekarang, kalau kita kata masjid, mesti kita fikir macam masjid yang besar-besar, ada tiang, ada kubah, ada minarets, ada bangunan yang proper, bangunan yang betul-betul boleh dipanggil masjid, macam Masjid Istiqlal kan, itu bangunannya proper. But during the time of Prophet Muhammad SAW, what are the features of the masjid during the time of Prophet Muhammad SAW? Itu yang kita nak kena faham juga. Sebab itu kita come up with the conclusion that the whole area yang ada di depan ibu-ibu dan bapa-bapa di sini ni, the whole area that I surrounded it with the color of red, that one what we call it Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Al-Aqsa Mosque itu included all itulah semua sekali itu. And then the features of masjid itu, we answer that there is actually the proper building itu adalah kesempurnaan kepada masjid. But the ciri-ciri of the mosque or the features of the mosque in Islam, we only need the three elements. The first one is the location, the second one is the boundaries, and the most important one is the direction of the mosque, which is towards the Qibla. Saya cuma nak kongsikan dengan ibu-ibu dan bapa-bapa di sini. When we do the study, we try to look into the shape of the shape of Masjid Al-Aqsa, the surrounded area that I have already explained to you. The whole area yang saya tanda kamera tadi, we look into the shape and then we compare it to the Kaabah, to the shape of Kaabah, to look whether there is a link or not between the first Qibla and then the second Qibla. Masjid Al-Aqsa, by the way, is the Muslim first Qibla. I mean, after the Prophet Muhammad SAW came down from the night journey and ascension, the first Qibla that he prayed towards to is Masjid Al-Aqsa. Jadi bila kita buat perbandingan berkaitan dengan shape Masjid Al-Aqsa ini, kita dapati bahawa terdapat persamaan di antara binaan bangunan Kaabah itu dengan binaan yang ada di keseluruhan kawasan Masjid Al-Aqsa. Kalau kita tengok perbandingan di situ, kita buat 3D comparison. The first top photos is about the Kaabah, how they built the Kaabah during the early Islamic era, and then the existence of the kawasan Masjid Al-Aqsa itu, kita dapati bahawa kawasannya adalah sama. Ini pertindihan image yang kita buat kawasan Al-Aqsa Enclave and di Kaabah. Kita dapati bahawa sisi dan jajarannya of the shape of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the shape of Kaabah is similar to each other. Itulah yang saya rasa the gist of the paper that I share with the committee, and I would like to stress that the point on the understanding of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, we need to get the real understanding on it. We cannot be kita tidak boleh untuk tidak memahami what is the meaning of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, because if we do not understand the correct meaning of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, we will fall into the trap that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was not existed during the time of Prophet Muhammad SAW. So it's very difficult to answer if we do not really understand this issue. For the Night journey ascension, there are three different opinions among Muslims. There are three opinions among Muslims. First, they accept what Prophet Muhammad SAW mentioned about the night journey ascension. I mean, by body and soul. The second one, the second group is only accept that the journey was only the spiritual journey, and then the third one, those who are reject totally the the process lah. I mean the event of the night journey ascension. So itu part yang pertama yang saya nak kemukakan berkaitan dengan epistemological problem on understanding the issue of the word of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. The second part, as Professor Asfa Widianto asked me to probably just to a little bit touch upon, is my latest paper that has just been published 2 days ago in Turkey, which is about the Malaysia stance towards Trump decision on or regarding Baitul Maqdis. This is a very simple one. In Malaysia, we have state actors and non-state actors, like in Indonesia. The government of Malaysia, we do not have a formal relation with Israel. We know that the Prime Minister of Malaysia, I think everyone also know that the Prime Minister of Malaysia during the last United Nations General Assembly 73 last year, and the current one this year, United Nations General Assembly 74, he stressed the issue of being kita kena bagi justice towards the Palestinians in this issue. So, in terms of Malaysia's stance towards the Trump decision to move American embassy to Jerusalem, we do not regard it, we do not support the decision because of the most important thing is to give the justice to the people in that area. So the state actors and also the non-state actors come together in this matter. And this latest paper, I spread it already. Everyone can download it freely. I put it in my Facebook and I share it also with other colleagues. So with that note, I would like to conclude by saying that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, even though there are problems in understanding some of the terminologies, but it is equally important to the Muslims as well as to the monotheistic religion, to the Christians and to the Jews. As Professor Al-Qaradawi always mentioned, that the Muslims against the Israel is not because they are Jews. So we have to understand that. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Manitan Prof. Ruslan, terima kasih Prof. Ruslan dari saudara kita dari negeri jiran ya. Saya pikir mau protes asap, ternyata presentasi ya dari Kalimantan dan Sumatera. Many thanks for this inspiring lecture on Masjid Al-Aqsa and also Malaysia perception pertaining to Trump decision to regarding Baitul Maqdis. Actually, I am as the chair doesn't have obligation to present, but I saw that it is also relevant for me to present a little bit my paper. Kultum aja, ya dari 7 menit aja. So we have 10. Then after my presentation, for short presentation for discussion with our distinguished guests and scholars. Yeah. Yeah, my presence is about knowledge society as antithesis to post-truth society, and what is actually the contribution of Indonesian Muslim knowledge culture pertaining to building or developing knowledge society, and so as to counter the rise and emergence of post-truth society. So my approach is from sociology of knowledge, but I would like do this presentation in 7 minutes. Yeah. This is what I mean by knowledge society. This is society which generates and share and knowledge, and also makes available knowledge for not for the sake of curiosity alone, but for improving human condition. It is maybe called in Arabic maslahah. So knowledge is not only for knowledge, but all for maslahah. This is knowledge society. This is the characteristic of knowledge society, and we know that some Muslim world, including Indonesia, Malaysia, are approaching the word knowledge society. This is the notion from sociology of knowledge. And what is relevant here is we have in knowledge society distinct epistemic culture of knowledge production and knowledge utilization. So not only knowledge consumption, bukan cuma konsumsi pengetahuan, tapi production. And here we to delve into our main discussion. This is the autocriticism from Basar TV that Muslims were and have been concerned with knowledge for living. So we are as Muslims usually are concerned with morality, ethics, and other al-ulum al-ukhrawiyah. And but at that time, especially in 90s, Western are concerned with knowledge for power, how to use knowledge for exploiting the world, for making progress, development, and others. Although the latest development, there is also attempt of Islamization and integrating between Islamic sciences and Western sciences. So this is post-truth. This is not necessary to mention because Professor Juicy has elaborated more about post-truth. I just highlight a bit that in the post-truth, the distinction or the difference between truth and lies is no longer important, because effectiveness is the measure of truthfulness of a claim. We have affiliative truth. That truth is affiliated to any particular group. Bahkan kalau di Indonesia itu kebenaran itu menganut ormasnya masing-masing. Ya, ada Pak Prof. Ahmad mengatakan SK ormas itu sekarang menjadi togut baru, ya. Togut baru, jadi Tuhan baru. Nah, bukan agama kita, bukan Islam, tapi ormas masing-masing. Nanti kita diskusikan. Terutama di beberapa luar Jawa itu ada ribut karena itu, ada ribut karena rebutan SK ormas. Saya tidak sebut namanya. And here, what is the implication of post-truth? I quote Nietzsche, that German philosopher, that conviction are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. Actually, conviction, our personal belief, which is fostered during the post-truth age, is an enemy for making us critical in consuming knowledge. Sometimes scapegoat mechanism like empathy and prejudice is prevalent during the post-truth. And post-truth community is a community of affiliative truth which is developed and fostered within their own community. So in communication we know homophily and heterophily. Homophily is when we in the same background of between speaker and audience. It is in the same tone, and we could easily build communication. And some Professor Alan Harris mentioned that we live in bubble in the cluster of group with the same interest and the same personal or emotion and other. And post-truth community create new social world. Yeah. What is actually could be done from us in counterbalancing post-truth? I just pick out some notion from sociology of knowledge, especially that we have the hierarchy that data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And nowadays, in the digital age, we have lived in abundance of data information, too much information. But can we say also too much knowledge? It is not possible for many scholars because knowledge is abstracted or extracted from this information and verified from this information and data. What is relevant today up to today is knowledge. We have much information, but only limited knowledge, and we'll move to further level, especially wisdom. It is much more limited, and if we develop knowledge and wisdom in the context of post-truth here in digital age, it could be a balance the rise of post-truth. This is my point of view pertaining to counterbalancing or to contrast post-truth. And this is inspiration from Indonesian Islam. Have make abstraction. What is relevant here? I understood that Islam Indonesia or Islam Nusantara and others have been understood as religious culture, kultur keagamaan. But we have to move to transform Indonesian Islam from religious culture to knowledge culture, budaya keilmuan. And this knowledge culture, especially comprised of three components. Knowledge ethos, epistemology, and transmission of knowledge. Ini waktunya tinggal 5 menit kan? Ya. Knowledge ethos itu pertaining to cosmopolitanism, adaptability and hybridity, also middle way and moderatism. So I see, for example, when I observe in social media, we also notice the existence of split personality, contradiction among scholars themselves. In the social media, for example, we notice that some scholars are critical in research production, in making dissertation thesis, but uncritical in consuming media. This is split personality. This is because we do not have knowledge ethos and epistemology. This is one of the second component of knowledge culture. We have to develop hybrid epistemology between classical medieval Islamic epistemology and Western epistemology. So I come to the last that with this knowledge culture, we try to build Muslim knowledge society. Although when we say Muslim society in sociological point of view, it is positivistic, but I understand as non-positivistic. So we observe the presence of religion in the public space in the form of transformed religion and others. I think this is just introduction to my presentation, just short presentation, and I would like to invite, masih ada waktu panitia 5 menit untuk diskusi. Ya panitia ya udah 10 menit aja, 10 menit. 10 minutes for discussion. If you have any question, ya silahkan. 1, 2, nah, ada mic di depan.
Alright, thank you very much for time and very interesting presentation. And my question for Mr. Hans. What's love something, love just because something, and then what do something only to get something, and then what for happiness or for what? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Fitri from Aicis. I will ask and I will give highlight for Che from Malaysia concerning to your statement refer to Holy Quran chapter 17 verse 1, particularly on the verse Barakna hawlahu minal masjidil haram minal masjidil aqsa barakna hawlahu. We know that the term Barakna, most scholar says that means increased blessing or goodness. So if we look at Makkah today, we know the blessing and the mercy over there. The society, they live with what is without tax from another country. But in other hand, if we look at Palestine, for example, every day they live with unskilled, and there are many attacks from another country. So, how do you interpret this verse according to your article and your research? I think that's all. Thank you.
Ya, mari thank. Ada lagi? Kalau tidak ada, saya salam pada. Ya, Hans.
Yes, did I understand your question correctly, that you asked about the happiness of love and whether it has any purpose? I will explain this like that. You see, of course, everybody of us, without thinking, wants to be happy. He wants to be loved in order to be happy, and he thinks then that this is love. But this is, I think, an illusion if you think a little bit further. I mean, are you really satisfied that you think that somebody loves you only because you have a beautiful face, or because he loves you, or you have done something nice for him and he loves you therefore? Is this the satisfaction which love gives you? I don't think so. I think you are only happy and satisfied if love meets you, you encounter a love without having thought that somebody could love you in this way. So as long as you want to be loved, you will never experience the happiness of love. You experience the happiness of love if you encounter love when you did not expect it. And I can also explain it in another way. If you love somebody, you could say it's the same thing, or you could, if you reflect on it, it's the same thing if you say, I love fish. I personally love fish. So what does it mean? I love fish. I love to eat fish. Is this good for the fish? Is this love to the fish? It's love for myself. And of course I have some pleasure in eating fish. That's clear. But am I really happy? Is this the content of my life, to eat fish? It's just something in my life. And loving, for example, my friend, my wife, is this not very much more important than loving fish and having the pleasure to eat fish. And so you see that loving a person does not mean you want something from this person, you want to use this person for any purpose.
Yes.
Loving a person means you take yourself back and you only think of the happiness of the other. And this is what gives you also a great satisfaction in the end, and which makes you really happy. And of course, to be realistic, this is not possible if you get nothing back from the other. You will eventually get nothing back, then you will be so disillusioned that you don't have the strength to love this person who gives nothing back to you. But your intention can never be, I get something back. You can be happy if you get something back, and then you will have the strength to love this person too. And therefore, I think if you think more deeply about this, you can say love and everything which is important in your life is a gift. It's something you get without deserving it. And what does this mean? That this is a gift in life. It means you can say it's a gift of God. And that you can love somebody, and that you can be loved by somebody. What is the reason for this? The reason we can give with our limited mind is that God loves you. God loves every human being. And in the love, in the real love of any human being, you receive as a gift the love of God. You meet the love of God in the love you receive, and you meet the love of God in the love you give. You are able to give love because you are loved by God. And you can experience God's love if you try to love Him. Then He may give you the faculty to love Him, and to realize that He loves every human being, and though you can also participate in the love of God, and so to speak, become the messenger of God's love by loving other people, and can receive also God's love in the love of other people. And that is what I would call the way that God is inside this world and outside this world. You meet Him in the love of everybody who loves you or is kind to you. You meet God. But that means this person is not God. God gives you and him the possibility to have a mutual relationship of love. And is that the answer to your question?
Philosophy of love and yeah. Suka saya mendengar ya hujan berkaitan dengan cinta. Kata orang, dia kata ada 3 perkataan akan merubah dunia. I love you. Baik, persoalan tadi memang cukup baik. Saya jawab dalam bahasa Melayu ya. Bahasa Melayu dan Inggeris campur-campur. Ini kalau di Malaysia kita panggil campurization. Mohon maaf ya. Baik, ayat yang disebutkan tadi minal masjidil haram minal masjidil aqsa alladzi barakna haulahu. This is a very important questions to understand what is the correct meaning of its surrounding which we has been given blessing. Maknanya Masjid Al-Aqsa yang sekelilingnya diberikan apa tu tadi? Barakah. Di dalam ayat Al-Quran, kalau kita tengok Perkataan yang merujuk kepada barakah ini diberikan kepada Masjid Al-Aqsa dan juga disebutkan kepada inna awwala baitin wudi'a lin-nas allazi bi Bakkata mubarakan wa hudan lil alamin. Ayat yang merujuk kepada Kaabah itu kalau kita tengok kepada terjemahannya, dia tidak merujuk kepada kawasan, dia merujuk kepada baitin. Ya, merujuk kepada baitin. Tapi Masjid Al-Aqsa ini, kita nak faham Masjid Al-Aqsa ini diberkati sekelilingnya. Kaabah tidak, ayat Al-Quran tidak menyatakan diberkati sekelilingnya. Ya? Jadi macam mana kita nak memahami konsep itu? Kita datangkan satu teori sebenarnya dalam buku saya pun saya tulis berkaitan dengan barakah circle theory. Because in the Quran, the word that has been used by Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala is the word haula. How to understand the word haula? Haula ini kalau kita tengok di dalam lisanul Arab, bila dia menyatakan berkaitan dengan, menerangkan berkaitan dengan haula itu, seumpama kita melontarkan satu biji batu ke dalam tasik. Dalam tasik, tahu tasik ni apa? Tasik sama into the lake, and then it create a wave. Kan dia, kita balikkan batu itu, dia macam ada gelombangnya. Gelombang itu kan sekeliling. Jadi itu yang dikatakan sebagai haula, seperti you melontarkan batu dan dia mengelilingi. Sampai ke mana dia pergi? Ini kita datangkan dalam barakah circle theory. Profesor Abdul Fattah Al-Aicis dekat Turki sekarang, kita bersama melihat bahawa haula itu sempadannya boleh pergi sehingga sejauh mana kita merasakan barakah itu. Walaupun kita berada di Indonesia, still we have the spiritual and spiritual relations to the tempat itu. Sebab kalau kita nak melihat kepada maksud barakah, mufassir menyebutkan barakah itu dia ada dua makna. Satu makna hissi, satu makna maknawi. Hissi yang kita boleh rasa, maknawi ini kita boleh lihat. Tapi persoalan yang disebutkan tadi, apakah dengan berlaku konflik yang sekarang ini tempat itu barakah? Tempat itu masih barakah disebabkan status has been given by in the Quran, has been mentioned clearly in the Quran. Cara mana kita nak mengembalikan barakah itu terpulang kepada kita sekarang dari aspek kedudukan politik antarabangsa yang berada di situ. Dari sudut konflik, kita perlu berusaha untuk menyelesaikan konflik itu agar semua kita ini boleh merasai barakah Masjid Al-Aqsa itu. Itu yang kita kena fahami dari sudut itu. Kalau barakah circle theory, kita go from Masjid Al-Aqsa to Kaabah, sebab itu yang dinyatakan dalam Al-Quran. Jadi kita buat circle, dia pergi ke Turki, pergi sampai ke Egypt semua. Nanti kita akan terangkan dalam kesempatan yang berikutnya. Datang ke Malaysia, kita boleh sembang panjang ataupun dalam kesempatan lain di sini di Indonesia. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih Prof. Ruslan ya, sudah jelas tentang barakah for Masjid Al-Aqsa. Last point, Professor Juicy would like to explain us what is the relationship between postmodernism and post-truth. This is the core of our panel X41 of the core of the panel. What is the relationship between post-truth and postmodernism?
As the prefix of the two before the two words shows, there's an intimate relation. Postmodernism and post-truth say that as postmodernism and post-truth make irrelevant modernism and the truth. As postmodernism makes irrelevant the big narratives discourses, the metaphysical one, and post-truth made irrelevant this kind of discourse. And so postmodernism causes post-truth area, produce post-truth area. And the challenge of the post-truth as the postmodernism is not only fight for truth against interpretation, but the challenge is there such a thing as truth, as something as the truth, as truth. But now we are challenged to be more attentive regards the notion of truth, of what truth is. My point is that the critical attitude of philosophy don't dismiss the truth, the notion of truth, but is more awareness that we are involved in first person in what truth is. We have to fight for truth, we have to testify this truth. This involves not only the critical attitude as a philosopher, but as a religious woman or man. We are asked to testify our religion, to make it see public, to not keep in ourselves. Otherwise, this is our interpretation of the truth, of the religious truth, of the truth in general. We have to show to the other what for us is a matter in our beliefs, in our religious beliefs, or in our way of seeing the world.
Okay, thanks, Susi. Professor Han would like give one sentence or in 1 minute for pertaining to post-truth.
I just wanted to say that, I mean, if we speak about post-truth or postmodernism, we should actually first define what is truth and what is modernism. That we cannot do, of course, in this panel. It would be a book. I want not to say anything about truth, but perhaps of modernism. There are two notions of modern. Modern was a word which existed long ago, and it meant simply contemporary. Today, the modern world is something different, and you must know one thing. Modern is something which is a purely Western notion today. Modern art, modern thinking was created in Europe by the shocks of the 2 world wars. And it was the shock of the world wars which shook all the value systems of Europe. Of course, World War means you had the wars too in Asia, but you had a different reaction. In Europe, the First World War created modern art and modern thinking because it completely changed the whole value system. There was a value vacuum, and there, in this value vacuum, there came a new way of thinking, a new way of art. And this did not happen in other parts of the world, in no part of the world. Because we, Europeans, were responsible for this war. And this war was in contradiction to all our values. And therefore, still, you see this, modern art exist outside Europe if it's not influenced by Europe? There is no modern Japanese or Chinese art. There's only Chinese modern art, which is an imitation of Western modern art. And also I think the same discourse is valid for thinking. So, speaking about modern and postmodernism, you should be clear that you should not fall into the trap to conform yourself to European notions, which in a very large degree, fortunately, have no roots in your culture.
I think the discussion is flowering and going further, and this is not the conclusion, but this is one of the start of our discussion, and we will discuss very else, and I hope this will become a food of thought, makanan pikiran buat kita semua. My thanks for distinguished speaker. We give applause to them. Yeah. And we hope we will meet again makes you something like that. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah. This on behalf of the committee, I would like to design something for the speaker. Yeah. As a token of appreciation from the committee. Yeah. The Indonesian committee. So, Hans first, no? This is for you. Yeah. This is for Dr. Han. From our Director General. Yeah, what to do?
I do not deserve it, therefore it will collapse.
Sign of love of appreciation and love, yeah. The second from to Professor Aicis.
Depan sini depan mas. Supaya kita ambil gambar.
For Professor Gusi, give a lot of applause. Saya juga cakap.
Profesor Roslan.
Depan sana.
Oh, depan juga.
Oke, supaya Oke,
terima kasih.
ya. Malaysia dengan Indonesia. Ipin dan Uping.
Many thanks for the audience ya. Terima kasih atas waktu dan kesempatannya untuk hadir pada siang hari ini.